Hey, I'm your host, Scott Dr. Jigs Goldfine. Welcome you to another episode of Where'd You Get Your Funk From? Shout out to PTFI for the funky theme music. For this episode, I'm delighted to welcome Kenyon Ross Jr., better known as Defiance Douglass, records and performs under the band name Exiles of the Nation. Founded in 2005, EOTN has released some 20 eclectic funk rock albums featuring Douglass's inimitable composing, vocals, keyboards, drums, and other sonic elements and production. He was born into a musical family down in the 1970s, recorded as the Family Plann, and today performs as the Ross Brothers Band, of which he is a member. His latest studio opus is 2024's 12-song LP, titled after the group's acronym EOTN. Defiance, thank you for being here, man. How are you?
I'm great, bro. Great to be here. Great to be seen. Always. And shout out once again to Mike Patterson. He shouted me out. He was like, "Oh yeah," I wore it at the Funketeers for a couple weeks ago. He loved that. So shout out to Mike P. Pro Body's Nerve Fix. He performs with Exiles of the Nation from time to time. We have some shows. He's part of the Dungeon family. He was also George Clinton's engineer for 5 years, 2000 to 2005. But he's a hell of a guitarist, hell of a writer, hell of a bassist.
Right on. Looks like the only thing missing for you is some lemonade there. Are you chilling out on the porch or what?
Yeah, on the patio. Just enjoying the warm weather before the winter comes and messes everything up.
Oh, great to connect with you. Communicated for a long time and finally doing this. And you're down in Atlanta, correct?
Yes, the south side of Atlanta, spot called Riverdale, Georgia. Not too far from Hartsfield, Atlanta International Airport. Probably like 5-10 minutes away, 15 minutes, probably, depending on the traffic.
And you're
And
from there originally?
yes. Born and raised south side Atlanta, Riverdale, Georgia, Clayton County. Also, my father's family is actually from Toledo, Ohio. So, that's a big basis of funk right there, just the whole Ohio thing, you know what I mean? Being able to be really cool with Mike Funkadelic Hampton, the legendary one and only, and him and Lodge, of course, they're from Cleveland. So, that's definitely a cool thing, because Cleveland and Toledo, not too far away from each other and all of that. That's where all the music was. That's where it started. And they
Well,
brought it here. And
let me jump in and ask you my first question, which is the name of the show, because I think you're starting to kind of touch on that. And it's where'd you get your funk from, Defiance? So, from a like 30,000 foot view, because we'll dig deeper, but how did you initially get the feel for funk and the love for it? And how has it shaped who you are?
It's everything that I am. I mean, I can't even imagine what my life would be without funk. It started, the funk journey really started in '93. Um, you know, Being born in '83 in this life, I was always around my father's band rehearsing. They would usually rehearse sometimes in my our apartment where we stayed in. And back then, by the time I was 3, I was playing the keys. I was really starting to learn that, and be just really self-taught. And while they were still, they're playing, and really the first artist that I really got into really was MJ and Jackson's. Because they were so big, you couldn't escape it. It was all around in the late '80s. You know what I mean? So that just continued. And since I had a kid voice, my parents would give me Jackson 5 albums and things to learn, to kind of like pattern my voice after Michael's voice when he was young, as a kid. So one of those albums that they gave me was Jackson 5 A, B, C. And that has a little song called I Bet You on it. And it's originally a funkadelic song. So, you know, when I heard that, I remember asking my father, I was like, wow, this sounds so different from everything else that's on that album. I mean, the whole album was funky, don't get me wrong. ABC is a funk jam. You can call it bubblegum, people call it bubblegum or whatever, but it was a funk jam. But still, I bet you it was something else. And so I was like, what is this? Why does it sound so different? And he was like, that's probably funkadelic. And that's when all the journey started with that. And so, you know, I remember between the summer and fall of 1993, I was introduced to Parliament Funkadelic, Earth, Wind and Fire, and Prince, all in that. So just imagine a 9, almost 10-year-old, because I didn't turn 10 until November, you know, 9, almost 10-year-old listening to all this stuff. Your mind is blown. Like, what? How? Where did this come from? You know? And so all of that, you know, in conjunction with my father and my father's family being from Ohio, you know, it just all solidified that I was supposed to be a punk artist, and that's it. And you know, I've been adamant about that ever since, and it's kind of caused problems being here because Atlanta used to be a funk city, honestly. You know, you have people like Cameo, Mother's Finest, my father's band, Family Plann, Brick, all of that, you know, but things started to change where the band started breaking up and people started pulling them into being more session musicians, you know. And so a lot of Atlanta where it comes to that, but I love Atlanta. You don't get me wrong. You know, I love being here, but sometimes it is hard being a funk artist and a funk rock artist, really, you know, because it's so centered on hip hop, you know, and R&B. Just that's pretty much it. If you're, you know, you're discolored, then that's what you're gonna do. And you know, you try to do other things with it, but that's how I always incorporated hip hop with funk rock and with Exile music. You know, every album has that hip hop feel. I always say funk rock, hip hop equals Exile music. You know, you put them all together and you see where you get, and then you can put anything else you want. It's all about freedom, musical freedom.
Yeah. So it's funny because, you know, I'm older than you, but that same record, ABC, when I was a kid was when it was out. And it was like one of the first ones I gravitated to also, you know, and got me on the trail of eventually being deep into funk. That same album.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So, you know, he brought me in at basically I think the first thing I did get was that the collection that came out in '84 called The Bomb, Parliament, The Bomb, or something like that. And you know, that was kind of like a basic introduction to Parliament, basically. But I also got a thing called Atomic Clinton, which was a 4-track cassette EP. And it was all the long versions, Atomic Dog, Man's Best Friend, all the, you know, the extended real versions. It was called Atomic Clinton. And that really did it. I was like, oh, man. And that's where a lot of the influence, because I always say that the P-Funk from 1978 to '86 is kind of like my favorite. Not even my favorite, but most influential to my son, to Exiles of the Nations. Just
Yeah.
that urban
It's
dance
more
look.
electronic. Yeah. Yeah. More
Yeah,
electronic, what you got. Yeah.
more pulsating, more dance oriented. But you know, not disco, but you know, it could some things could, you know, but it's a harder disco. It felt like a militant disco, you know, and it incorporated funk rock into it. You know, I mean, not just Knee Deep is a what I call a funk rock dance opera. You know, that's what it is, really.
Operatic
Funk
vocals
rock
for
dance.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, especially with Jessica Please. And she worked with the fire too, you know, those long notes, you know, keep your head to the sky at the very end, you know. So there's always a connection. Always. But
So
he
what
came
was,
down here to 1974. They came down and they signed with a label called Bill Laurie. Laurie Productions, and then they ended up getting signed to Drive Records, which is a subsidiary of TK Records, which is Casey and the Sunshine Band label and things like that. So, you know, things were up, and their song "Sexy Summer" was actually a regional hit in 1974, 75.
What was their style and sound like?
It was funk. It was funk and R&B and dance. Really, you know, it was party music. You know, it was but they could it's all on YouTube. If you look up "Family Plan" with two N's, "Family" and "Plan" with two N's, you'll see a bunch of stuff on YouTube. Just say "sex family plan," and it'll pop up.
When did they change the name?
They changed. They stopped using "Family Plan," I think, around like 1990, around that time. They were still "Family Plan" all through the 80s, but some of them, a couple of the members broke off because of three brothers, a cousin, and a friend. Sound familiar? But sounds like a band from LA. Sounds like some band from LA. But that's a long story. I'm not gonna go there. But yeah, so three brothers, cousin, and a friend, and their father was their manager, my grandfather. And my father was a drummer, is the drummer. And I picked up drums from him too and stuff. So but
Did they get to open for any like name acts?
um yeah, I can't totally remember all this stuff, but I remember that they actually did a song. There was a female vocalist, and they kept talking about her. I remember when I was a kid. Her name was Tamiko Jones, and they did background on one of her songs, and I think it was like the late '70s. And she actually performed that on American Bandstand. Yeah, so you know their voices were on there. You know, Dick Clark must have interviewed her or whatever, something like that. And but it was just something they, for whatever reason, they really just the label just put out singles. They never let them do albums, you know, and that bothered me. For whatever reason, it was just singles. You know, if you put all the singles together, then it is albums. You know? So I just don't think they knew what they were doing with them. And so, you know, by the '80s, my uncle had left, and one of the cousins left, and you know, so really it was down to my dad and my uncle, really, and you know, they hired people in to be the band, and so they kept going throughout the '80s here, you know, and they were a big draw, definitely, you know, one of the biggest bands here in Atlanta, for you know, all the way from the '70s to right before the pandemic. You know, pandemic messed up everything. But you know how it goes.
Defiance, what was the first concert you ever saw that really like kind of, took you out?
First concert. What, live or on TV, on like video?
In person.
In person. I mean, I guess it probably would be them. You know, because I can say on video when I first saw two of them. The Earth, Wind and Fire live in concert from 1982, which was the I remember seeing your interview with Larry Dunn, and you told me that, well, y'all were talking about Power Light and Rays and things of that nature, right? And he was saying that, you know, that was like the last tour they did. They didn't tour for Power Light. Remember that? Yeah. So, but it was that Let's Groove tour, and you know that really blew my mind, because you know when you see the Phoenix coming down and the lasers, and you know, presenting wind and fire, you know, and then you just see them just right there, and everything going up. Then you see Red Raise up on the drum, you know, the razor. It was just amazing, you know what I mean? Just I just knew that I always wanted something to be in a band. Seeing that, you know, and then the next one was Prince, Sign of Time. live, Both of those I saw in like 1994 around that time. And, I knew from then I was like, this is good. But I just, I didn't know how hard it was going to be. I thought, I thought if you just really kind of try to do it at the highest level you could possibly do it, it would do it. But, they just didn't want that anymore. They didn't, they couldn't take it. But it's still, the future is coming right now. This is great. I'm ready for it.
How'd you develop your skills and kind of, get the hang of, putting your own thing together?
I think it was really around 95. I did the first two original songs late 94. There was one song called Heartbreak on My Mind and another one called Take It to the Top. Now, yeah, I was 10 and a half at the time, basically. And I co-wrote those songs. And first, the Heartbreak on My Mind was kind of like, they wanted me to, since I was a kid and everything, that song Candy Rain by Soul For Real was really big. So it kind of had that kind of sound to it, right? Kind of a, pop, new jack, R&B thing. But the second track, Take It to the Top, was a funk track. And I'm like, God, I must be like one of the youngest artists to do a funk track at 10 and a half years old. But it was slamming. And so I co-wrote that at, 10 and a half. And there were some actual serious lyrics. And I was like, wow. So that started it, going through all of that, and Apollo and all of that stuff. And then really around 97, 98, between that time, that's when I really started writing and producing and recording more. The keyboard that I had before then actually had some type of, those keyboards that had the speakers, but then you could also record a drum track and record a piano track or whatever track you want. You know what I mean? That trained me to be able to know how to be able to do multi-track recording. You know what I mean? And that's basically how I started really producing myself. And then the first song that I produced and wrote all of myself and recorded was a song called When You Think You Know Someone. It was in 1997. I was what, 14, 13, 14. And that song I actually re-recorded. I put it on Atlantic Ocean Black in 2020. Yeah, I re-recorded it. I was like, well, damn, this is perfect. My first song ever, that I totally wrote and produced myself. And, I was able to re-record it and put it on a later album. So, kind of a full circle.
Your first album came out in the 2000s. Before that happened, did you you mentioned Mike Hampton. Had you already met him or anyone else from P-Funk, or had you gone to some of their shows, or what? Where were you at then?
I first met Michael Hampton actually in 2003. Just a kid, I was 19. And on the Bricks, this is about Centennial Olympic Park, of course. And they used to have a thing called a festival called On the Bricks in the summer. And me and my first girlfriend went there, and I saw P-Funk in all their glory with Belita and Gary and everybody. And, everybody that was in that crew in 2003. And at the very end of the show, first person I actually met was Greg Thomas. Yeah. And then Michael Hampton came. Yeah. So basically, I was able to really talk to them. So, fast forward, going back to 2020, now, a couple of weeks ago at the Maryland at the Funky Tears Ball, being greeted right again by Greg Thomas. That's full circle right there. You know what I mean? You don't get better than that. So it's always a memory, but that's the first one. But actually, strangely enough, I may have met a P-Funk member before I even knew, because, at the point when I performed with the Temptations in Chastain Park in 1995 here in Atlanta, Ray Davis was actually the bass vocalist for Temptation, replacing Melvin Franklin, who is either he was, sick or had just passed. And so I didn't really get to meet him, like talk to him really, but I was on stage with him and I didn't even know it, because I didn't know all of the members by that time. I was still, still learning about everything. But then, I have the picture and I posted it, and Ray's son, Derek of Original P, before he passed, he confirmed that, yeah, you definitely met my father before you met anyone. So that's how that worked.
How'd you develop the name Exiles of the Nation? Where'd that come from? And when did you become Defiance?
The name Exiles of the Nation. Well, that's a long kind of story. I always had a idea that I remember an album, because there's about 5 to 7 albums, maybe even 10 albums before Exiles of the Nation. I formed them, that I actually recorded them, and they're just kind of like sitting in the whatever vault there is. I always had, and on that cover, I saw it. The album was going to be called Rebellion, and it said K. Ross and the Nation. I remember using that name, K. Ross and the Nation. And so that was 2001, 2002. So by the time 2004 happened, I had kind of joined up with a band, a cat named Stoney Teller. And basically we're the co-leaders of this band. He wanted to call it the League, but I just kept remembering the Nation from, these past albums that I kept putting together. And I was like, well, why don't we just call it the Nation? Because he was talking about the League of like Extraordinary Gentlemen, like the movie, And so I was like, no, the Nation sounds cooler, And so we did that for a while, but overall, even though we stayed cool for a long time after that, it was just best for us to kind of have our own musical thing. So he left and formed a band called Malice of Stones, and I formed Exiles of the Nation. And somebody asked me this like a week and a half ago. They're like, well, when you say Exiles of the Nation, some of us think you're talking about you're exile of P-Funk. I was like, no, not at all. Now, Exiles of the Nation mean we're all exiles of America. The nation is America. You know what I mean? And until we're like really all free and be able to really be who we are and exactly who we want to be, and then we're exiles. And that's what it really means. And so that's the reason why I do try to stay away from politics and things of that nature, because the reason why I got into punk and punk rock the most, and rock and roll period, I really believe it was all about freedom. If it isn't, then somebody should let me know that it's not.
Yeah, well, that's why you chose the name Defiance too, right? I mean, you want to go against the grain and be different and stand up from the crowd and not be a conformist, right?
Right. Well, yeah, at first I was named K. Ross. That was my first name. And then around 08, 07, I changed it to Victor McCoy. And McCoy is my mother's maiden name. But hers is MCCOY. But I spelled it MCKOY. It was still keep the K in there. And that lasted for a while, but then I ended up signing with a label, and things didn't work out the way that it was supposedly going to work out. So they had they had my name, and I was like, well, at least they don't own Exiles of the Nation's name. I can't, but I can change my name. And so I just happened to be one of my ex-girlfriends. She lived in Douglasville, and I was out there with her. And there was an album that, well, I eventually ended up coming out with an album called Defiance and Atlanta Conformity, in 2018. But around that time, it was going to be Victor McCoy, Defiance and Atlanta Conformity. But then I was in Douglasville. So, and then also one of my biggest inspirations by the name of Brian Wilson. His middle name is Douglas. And so I was just like, this all makes sense. It all makes perfect sense. And then I was about to turn 30. So I was like, well, this is the time. Let's change it right here when I'm about to turn 30. And this will be, Defiance Douglass is K. Ross and Victor McCoy combined, like the ultimate power, kind of like one of those Marvel movies. When you combine, you combine the power, like that Eminem video that was out when him and the new Eminem and the old Eminem were fighting, and then all of a sudden they combine. That's basically what it is. K. Ross and Victor McCoy equals Defiance Douglass. And, every name's the same.
Ego and the id, yeah. Why do you go with a band name though, as opposed to just your own name?
Huh. Wow. Cool. That's a question I've always wanted to answer. And people have asked me that. Because I always a band was just it for me. I don't know, Prince, I know how big of a Prince fan you are, and I am, obviously I'm very influenced by it. It's no way you can listen to Exiles and Nation and be like, oh, I wonder who this is influenced. You know what I mean? But I don't even think Prince actually really wanted to be known as a solo artist. You know what I mean? He wanted to, but he loved the idea of bands. He loved the idea of bands so much that the only time he didn't do a band was the last tour. Everything was all about the band, And so that's where my mind was. It was all bands: Prince and the Revolution, MPG, Earth, Wind and Fire, Problem Funkadelic, Sly and the Family Stone, James Brown and the JBs, Rick James and the Stone City Band, Rufus and Shaka Khan, So there's things that you can do under a band name that you just can't do under an artist. You know what I mean? Like there's songs and there's concepts and ideas that you can put under a band name. It's like a freedom. I think it's a freedom that where it kind of like expands just the way of thinking about music. You know what I mean? And as much as I'm the front man and whatever, but at the same time, I never wanted it to just be about me, even though I did write, produce all this stuff. But I never wanted it to just be about me.
Did you want to though be a person who, did so much, in terms of, the composing and the instruments and the vocals, or did it just kind of evolve that way?
Oh, I wanted to do that because that was the first and foremost thing I wanted to. I think at the end of the day, I wanted Exiles of the Nation to finally. I wanted them to be looked at as one of the most prolific funk rock bands, discographies. Prolificness has always been something that's been influenced. I'm mostly influenced by people and artists and bands who are really prolific. You know what I mean? Really prolific. It takes a while, and a lot of people don't want to actually take the time to, go through every album. But that's a hard thing when somebody has a lot of albums. But I just love the whole prolificness thing, and that's the reason why. I think, and that the goal is accomplished, I believe.
Well,
all it takes is people to know about it more. It's out there for free.
Yeah, and I always like prolific artists too, because if you're a fan, it's so rewarding, because you get constantly, material, and you can look forward to it and rely on it, and you can go so deep. And yeah, I think I joined your journey in probably like 2016 or 2017 when I got back into, a lot of social media and stuff like that. And I discovered you through social media, like a lot of people,
Right.
I'm guessing, probably did, And then
It was
learn more going back after that, you know?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
it's a blessing, definitely. I mean, that's the one thing about social media is, I mean, Facebook is really the only social media I'm on like a regular basis. I'm really not on Instagram like that. I do have a thing, but I never really posted anything. You know, just didn't really feel like it was necessary. But it was a blessing to get on Facebook and really um get involved with the whole Punketeer, just everybody. You know, it's just a whole community that doesn't exist in regular reality. You know what I mean? Because the people really they love funk and they love it just as much as me, and they want to see it be successful again. You know,
Mm.
mainstream wise. I mean, it's successful still, no matter what. Music is a success upon creation. That's one thing Prince always taught. That's the one, you know, one of the lines that really stuck with me. Music is a success upon creation, and Prince loved it. Among other things, a hell of a lot of it.
How do you feel that your music and your musicality has evolved since you first started putting out EOTN music?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, there's all types of ways to change the times. You know what I mean? Like, Taylor Road, 2006, and it's a trip because Outkast is a big inspiration for me as well. Of course, you know, just the whole Dungeon family, Outkast, Goody Mob, you know. Um, you can't grow up in Atlanta or South Atlanta and not be totally, you know, see what they were doing. It was amazing. So, you know, Outkast's final album so far was in 2006, like 3 months before Taylor Road, August 2006. And then Taylor Road came November 2006. And so, you know, Outkast was 94 to 2006. And then now we're like 2006 all the way to 2024. So it's almost kind of like a passing of the torch type thing. You know what I mean? In a way, because our music is similar, you know, and obviously, I mean, they were funky. Outkast was funky, you know, and that was the closest that Atlanta got to funk since Cameo. You know, so it was impossible to not be influenced by them. But it was um it was a changing of the guard because the whole thing was it was starting to go more towards the whole trap thing, you know. And so Outkast was getting out of it, and you know, other people were coming in, and it was more about the whole trap thing. So I was trying to kind of continue the whole, you know, eclecticness of everything that was going on with Dungeon Family and things of that nature, and everybody else was going totally another direction that wasn't musically cool. So that's when I did Escape from Trap City, and you know, Exiles of the Nation's second album, Escape from Trap City. Yeah. That's what that was all about. It was really
Yeah.
marking drawing a line in the sand, basically. But
Well, and
unfortunately,
Andre 3000, of course, too, very influenced by Prince and P-Funk.
of course, yeah, definitely. I mean, definitely. Of course, George was on synthesizer from that album, Equipment too. So, you know, George, he loves P-Funk. I mean, he loves Dungeon Family. You know, it's one of their favorite things. You know, so George worked with Big Boy and Outkast many times. So he always called him like his kids and stuff. So yeah, man.
When I listen to your music, you know, I mean, I hear the influences that you say, obviously like Prince and P-Funk and hip hop, but also like maybe like a Nine Inch Nails or something that brings that industrial kind of feel, you know?
Yeah. Well, see, that's another thing. That came from growing up in the '90s. Yeah, now I mean, I tell you what, we really started getting MTV all the way around like 96, 97, and by that time they had stopped showing Prince, you know, because Prince left Warner, and so they weren't showing it like that on MTV anymore. So I started seeing other stuff. So I started seeing Trent Reznor and Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson and Smashing Pumpkins. So I was listening to that stuff, and I was like, "Wow, I like this." Kind of has that. One of our signature sounds, Exiles of the Nation, is the distorted bass. There's always that's one of our signature things. The distorted, fuzzed out bass, thing, and that's one of our trademarks. So that came from that, I think. A lot of it came from, of course, Bootsy and everybody who did that, used the bass distorted, but they really love to use that distorted kind of dark bass, and just dark drums. You know what I mean? So I kind of took that and put it with the hip hop drums and things of that nature, but still always had to keep it on the one. And I always wanted to make sure that it was still unapologetically black as well. So that was the whole thing. They seemed like they couldn't get funk or rock or whatever because they, for whatever reason, they thought it was not black. But I always knew I made it in a very unapologetically black way. And there's no way that anybody could listen to Exiles of the Nation's album and not know that, that's where it's coming from. It's part of the culture. So I always wanted to, make sure that people knew that it is part of the culture. So I'm not putting it down, but I want to see it get better. Same way, Kendrick Lamar seems like he wants to see it get better.
Well, distortion is a key element for sure, I think, in the sound. And it also creates that like edginess,
Oh yeah, that's another thing. I couldn't imagine making music or releasing albums and I couldn't have any kind of edge. You know what I mean? And things are starting to kind of get really blander and blander and blander. And I'm trying to keep people up. But I don't know, it's like they try to make it like there's no place for anything that really excites people anymore. It's almost like they want people to fall asleep. I don't know.
Like lull people into a trance, right?
Right, I guess. Sound like a lot of it just sound like people just like floating in outer space and they like, oh, you're like floating and it's just like too much reverb. God, draw it back a little. Let's get a little rawness. Let's get a little dryness back into this. You know what I mean? Let's have a little fun.
Do you look to for lyrical inspiration?
Lyrical inspiration. Just truth. Just being truthful, honestly. And just being able to say exactly what you want to say and not sugarcoat it. I've always been that way, And I still say there's something for everybody. Yes, most of Exiles of the Nation's albums have a coronavirus sticker on it and things, but I still believe there's things on there that aren't totally explicit. I mean, every album has peaks and values, so it can't just be all clean, and then it can't just all be dirty either. We try to mesh it up so that the album won't get boring. Different sounds, but really where everything's going right now, the whole Trap City thing, it's kind of over now. So it's cool because I've always said, and I'm sure you've seen that I've said that the rest of this decade is pretty much ours for the taking if you really want it. It just has to be the right way. Funk can really come, Kool and the Gang's induction a few days ago, I think really kind of, got people's attention a little, for real. You know what I mean? They're like, wow, this could still sound like this. Really, it could, you know what I mean? So things are changing in the industry, and so we'll see what happens next. But it's all funk rock and P-funk for me. and Exiles.
Hope springs eternal for funk. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wake up,
that's about.
man. Wake them up.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's the whole situation. That's the whole part of the reason why I'm adamant about trying to really solidify the whole thing with the mob, with P-Funk, and just kind of like figure out how we can all really work together and do all of that. And it's closer than you think. It's closer than a lot of people think. I just I'm just really being patient, but you know what I mean. But when I saw the Funketeers Ball, it was great. Big ups to Garrett Scheider and Danny and Benzel and the Baltimore Connection and all of them. Groove Allegiance. They turned it out at the Funketeers Ball in Maryland.
Regretfully couldn't make it. I had a trade show I had to be at, but I hope maybe next year.
Yeah, I've heard it. They've already kind of confirmed that there's going to be another one. So we'll see who's going to be at it. But if I'm around, I'll be there. But hopefully, maybe I'll be on stage. That's it.
Is that your dog or someone else's?
Neighbor, bro.
Yeah.
One of the neighbors.
The atomic dog next door.
Woof, woof.
Hey, so let's
Yeah,
dig. I'm going to dig into your newest album and give you some feedback if that's cool.
Oh yeah, definitely. Thank you.
So, and one of the things I didn't mention, but definitely worth getting out there is your willingness to sort of try experiments too, like patching different things together and, changing tempos and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think Eshawn Cooper. Shout out to Eshawn Cooper, great guitarist, great artist. But I think he said you're like the king of the mashups. You're the king of the mix. Basically like because one song can start one way and then it'll change into a whole another thing. And you're like, what the hell just happened? So
how do you decide whether to do that or whether to make them separate songs?
Sometimes it depends. If something is shorter and it just seems like it needs to be longer, then I may mix it with another song, or it just may go into another totally different direction entirely. I think that's part of the. I think I really started doing that later in the 2010s because of well, like I said, the hip hop influence, they started really doing that a lot, switching up the beat and things of that nature. So I was like, well, I can do that. I know how to do that because I love doing medleys and suites and things of that nature, So I really started doing that. And that's why, like, I say all the albums, like starting with like Illusion Delusion, really had that influence. 2017 is Illusion Delusion. And it continued on, and then by the time the 2020s hit, I had Live Each Day Like It's Your Last and Atlantic Ocean Black, and they were even more like that, you know what I mean? And then finally, the Obstacle Curse from 2 years ago, 2022, the double album, that was really the ultimate at doing that, mixing songs and being able to. Because, it was 79 minutes long, 14 songs, but it was really actually 19 songs. There's actually 19 songs on that album, but it says 14. But if you add up everything, it ends up being 19. And that was the 19th album. So that's the reason why I did it that way.
You tried to recreate those tracks live,
Well, see, that's the hard part. It would take a lot of practice and it would take a lot of rehearsal is cool, but it has to be for something that's that makes sense. You can't just be rehearsing just to play at just a local, kind of restaurant bar or something. That's it would have to be for a kind of a bigger thing. But it could happen. It really could.
Because I'm sure it'd
Exiles.
be challenging to get some of those down live, though. I'm sure.
Yeah, it really would be. yeah, I just want, want to perform more places and for more people who really do know the material, because sometimes you can play at some of these places and you can play a cover song and then play an original and they'll think that the original is a cover. You know what I mean? So, that's the hard part about it. But, like I said, music is a success upon creation. And every time, every day I see people streaming the music on whatever site. And so that's all I say. No matter if it's just 2 people or 200,000 or 2 million, as long as somebody's listening to it every day, it's a success. So,
And you're
so
and you artistically make your statement, right? I mean, that's
right.
yeah.
So with the new one, the last one, the EOTN album, I just wanted to, since the obstacle course was just so crazy and so long, I just wanted to make something a little more sleeker and maybe just a little maybe a little more digestible, maybe, and a little more fun too. You know what I mean? Just like I wanted to just hit it straight to the point, like boom, 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 boom. You know what I mean?
Well, you did a lot of singles before it came out, and giving
Yeah.
it that straightforward name, it's almost like your eponymous debut record 20 years later.
Right. Right. Well, yeah. Originally, it was going to be a reboot, really, because that's the new logo. And I had changed and got the new logo late 2022 after the obstacle curve, and it was supposed to be kind of a reboot, retaliation, and strawberry cream and better. They were released last year, but I'll say some problems, some issues with the last configuration of the band, probably delayed it. But after everything was said and done, I was like, well, I still got this, and so I went ahead and put the guessing game out as a single. I was like, well, people are receiving this well, so I think they're ready for the album. And I'm so glad I put that album out on July 12th, because before that, after that, a lot of stuff just started going crazy. I was like, man, I finally, I released it at the right time, because, yeah, it wouldn't have got talked about as much if I released it maybe like a week or two later, because the news and the politics campaign and Puff Daddy and everything just started going out of control. I was like, wait a minute. That's what happened with Living Stay Like It Should Last, 2020. I released that on leap year, right? I thought, that was going to be it. I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, this is going to be the album. I'm going to push this. We're going to start performing live and everything. And then a couple of weeks later, all of a sudden, the pandemic hits and everything's shut down. And so I'm stuck trying to promote an album called Live These Days Like It Should Last when people are actually, actually dying out there, about it. And I'm like, oh, Lord, let me just.
Well, it was actually an appropriate message. Yeah.
Yeah. But I just couldn't, while people were, getting, the virus, I couldn't continue promoting. Hey, please pick up Live These Days Like It Should Last. Oh yeah, and get your vaccination too while you're at it. I don't want to do that. So I was like, let me fix this real quick. Let me go ahead and do another album. So I went ahead and did Atlantic Ocean Black, and released it later that year to kind of make up for it. But it still stands. I love that album. I believe that's probably our second best album.
What do you think's your first best?
The obstacle course. I know, but it's so complicated. It's just something that I know I could never beat that album. There's no way. Woo!
Right, let me tell you the tracks I dig on the new one.
Okay. But EOTN, I would say that's up in the top 5 for sure. That's the hard thing about the new one. You know what I mean? People be like, oh, some people are like, oh, my new album is my best album. People are gonna be like, no, it ain't. You know what I mean? Because everybody has a. You
That's
know
like
what
a
I mean?
cop out. Yeah. When I ask on a
Yeah.
lot of these interviews, what's your best? Like, well, I think my newest is my, it's like, I don't know, man.
I don't know about that, but I'll say this, no, but this is definitely up there. I wanted to make a more modern version of kind of like our older albums, just how, how it was back when we started. So, the end of how we started it, is a good thing. I think it definitely, you know, encompasses the true Exile music sound. Yeah. Even more than that. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on it, Defiance. Some of the ones that I like the best on here, Stuck in a Place That You Can't Get Out.
Oh yeah.
You
Thank
know,
you.
that's like that got that funky bounce and the gurgling synth, and that's
Yeah.
gonna get me every time right there.
Shout out to Sonia Murphy. She big funketeer, big great friend of mine and great supporter of funk period. And she described that song as sounding like almost like the Rolling Stones. And I was like, yeah, I gotta feel that. You know what I mean? Just that kind of rock is kind of raw rhythm guitar, that kind of thing, So it always has to have that rebellion in it. I, I I couldn't imagine being an artist and not being rebellious. I mean, I couldn't imagine having to sing like the slow songs like every single night forever. I think that would bore me to death. I would be like, no, this torture. You know what I mean? I have to rock it out. It's rock and roll, funk rock.
Also, the exhaustion, that rhythm guitar and like that's an instrumental, but like the bed of synthesizers and very cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. There's Austin started off. It was it's an instrumental track, and that's to say there's probably going to be another version of that coming soon, because it started off life as kind of it's going to be something involving me and a couple of members of the current version of the Problem Responsibility, a family. So it was going to be that, but certain things didn't happen or whatever, and miscommunication. So I ended up putting this instrumental on the album, but it could still be made into what it was, originally going to be. But it was too funky. I had to put it, it was too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I truly appreciate
Yeah.
it.
About two-thirds through, man, you get that serious funk instrumental. And are you playing the rhythm guitar or somebody else?
Oh, that's yeah. I actually played all the instruments on this whole album. It was all me, for sure. But yeah, I did it on guitar on keys. I did it on keys. I really wanted, thinking about it in its placement on the album. I kind of I was reminded of a lot of the great stuff Roger Troutman did. Stuff like a touch of jazz on Zap 2. Getting kind of rough, show getting tough out there. It was the last song on the album, but it was an instrumental. It was kind of like part two of the getting kind of rough, song that was in the beginning of the album after Dance Floor. So that was kind of like my influence. I was like, it kind of has a feel of instrumental that Roger would put on one of his albums. So yeah, I
I'm
always want
also
to figure that out
I'm also digging on Bitter, it's like
better.
bluesy, man. It's got some blues feel
Right.
in there.
Well, that was somebody called it out, and yeah, it was definitely obviously inspired by kind of a slide type thing. There's a Riot Going On and Press are always going to be my favorite Slide and Family Stone albums, and so you know, there's a Riot Going On definitely inspired the album called Illusion Delusion back in 2017. It had stuff like Element of Surprise and Old World Disorder. And so, Bitter was kind of like a return to that kind of feel, that kind of really raw, bluesy, just gritty, it sounds bitter, you know. So I appreciate that. Yeah. It's actually my mother's favorite song for me on this album. That's a trip. Yeah, I wouldn't think my mom would like that song the most, but she got a little fire in her.
How many takes will you typically do on a track like that before you're like, yeah, this is cool?
How I typically do the tracks on when I'm doing it by myself, which is short as time. I will usually do the drums. I lay down every instrument track as if I was recording, like a band or something. I go step by step. Most of the time drums, then bass, then keys, piano, organ, or whatever else, clavinet, and then the solos or whatever. And I guess the way that I've been able to do it is, and then some rhythm guitar as well. I did a rhythm guitar on Stuck Into Place and Retaliation and things like that. But I'm able to really make it feel like it's still a band, so that when the band actually gets to rehearse and things of that nature, they already know kind of like how it's supposed to sound live, because it's already, it feels like it's live on the record. You know what I mean? So they can just kind of like follow that. And I just always wanted to make it feel like it was live. I didn't want to just loop everything. I wanted everything to still have a live feel. Like this bass guitarist is really, really, interacting with the guitar and the drums and the bass, all of that. That's what a band is supposed to sound like. If a band didn't have any kind of, it didn't feel like they were actually playing together, then it wouldn't even feel like a band. It would just feel like AI. you know. So I just always tried to make it still feel like a band, even if it was just me doing all of the stuff. But shout out to, said Reggie D, bass guitar, rhythm guitar, Andre, Tyrone Jenkins. They're the longest running band members, pretty much. Reggie came in 2010, and Andre was 07. And I started the band all the way like in 05 with Greg Washington on drums and a guitarist named Mari Adams. And so, they're still around and stuff. And I've had a lot of great, like Exiles of Nation has a lot of great musicians, like the best of the best in Atlanta. I mean, like, but they're raw, a lot of them aren't with like unions or anything. They're really raw. Smoke Tages, who is probably most likely going to be our current drummer again. He was with Arrested Development. He left he left Exiles and got with Arrested Development. Then he came back, and then he left again and went back to Arrested Development. Now he's not with them, but he's doing good. He's young. I love seeing him being able to do a drum school. So shout out to Smoke Tages 77. He has his own drum school. So does Greg Washington. And Greg Washington actually played, I believe, on one of Outkast's albums, either Criminal or Stank on. And so I just, I love I look at them as my brothers, because bands still, I just wish that it could have been a different situation sometimes, where we could have all just stayed in a place like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and, created the whole album and, that all that stuff, the Blood Sugar Sex Magic, and, how Rolling Stones did, I think it was Exile on Main Street, and things of that nature. How, they would just move into
Hold up in a house for 3 months and just do their thing,
just
man.
record and really have camaraderie like that, and that's the whole thing about bands. I always loved the camaraderie. And so when it comes to P-Funk and, me possibly being in the current lineups, and maybe, who knows, but that's the camaraderie that I really look for. And, every time I'm around them, every time, the last time I actually just totally performed with them was on August 8th, Atlanta Symphony Hall, and Fishbone was opening. And yeah, and it was just crazy, just being able to really talk to Angelo and Chris and Norwood, and just just really being around and people really know who you are. You know, just they're happy. You know, they're happy that you're there. You know what I mean? And it's family. It really is. And that's just something that doesn't exist a lot of times here in Atlanta as far as funk. So, you know, and that's where I belong. And so I know that, you know, a lot of stuff can happen where we could really be right up there all the way again. But you know, that was the first time I actually saw them, you know, because they, you know, a lot of times they just weren't able to come to the East Coast like that or the South and things like that. You know, a lot of times they were just, you know, pretty much in LA and or overseas. So it was just a blessing to finally really meet them. And then to even make it even crazier, Dallas Austin was there. And of course he's the one that put out the reality, not the reality, but Chim Chim's Badass Revenge, you know, and him being there, and then Nora was right there, and then Angela right there. You know, being able to just really tell Dallas and them, you know, Nora and just all of that to say that, you know, that album is the thing that really brought me into Fishbone. You know, once I heard that album, then I went back and listened to all the other stuff with Chris and Kendall and everything, and just blew my foot. Woo! Out of nowhere, just boom. Didn't even know it existed. You know what I mean? Because they didn't play it here in Atlanta. But you know, Rowdy Records was the label that they were on, and that's based in Atlanta. You know, that's where Monica and people like that were on. You know, so but that definitely exposed me and probably a lot of other people in Atlanta too, for being you know, associated with Dallas Austin. So it's just really cool. And Chris was funny. Chris was like, "Oh wow, you're gonna tell me that? Oh, that's the album that made you love Fishbone. I wasn't on that one." So I had to be like, "Look, no, I'm saying," but then that introduced me to all the stuff you were on, and that really blew my mind. So then
Yeah, right. You ever meet any of the Cameo guys there, or any of the guys from Brick?
um my father's band actually met Larry Blackman a few times actually. And I know Tommy Jenkins, and they definitely performed here. I missed one show that they did last year. Um, yeah, Tommy Jenkins and Charlie Singleton. Um, but actually, it's kind of a weird story because in '08, I had an original bass player and he left or something happened, and I ended up meeting this cat named Johnny Harris, and he was the bass player for a band called Cash Flow.
Mm-hmm.
Cash Flow was a band that Cameo put out on their Atlanta artist thing. And so it was like 85, 86 around that time when that came out. So I met him in '08, and he ended up starting to play bass for us for a few times before, you know, I just didn't know what happened to him. I believe he must, I'm not sure. I don't want to say it, but as a trip, and he was actually trying to get me to be the lead singer of the new Cash Flow. And it almost happened because all of a sudden in 2009, I looked up and I saw that they had a new single. That was almost me.
Well, just let me finish with the new record. So I really like the closing track too, Return of the Menace. You got your Camille like vibe going on the funk, you know?
Yeah, it was definitely that black album kind of feel. I wanted to kind of get to that again. And you know, kind of just because the very first song on the very first album was Exile Music. And so the track before Return of the Menace is they're called Free in Conclusion. And at the end of that song, there's a little snippet of the very first song, Exile Music, at the very end of that song. You got do 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 do. Yeah, that's the very first song. And then, you know, I put an organ after that, right? It's kind of like, but then Return of the Menace comes on and really, really brings that Exile Music sound all the way back. You know, it feels like 2006 all over again. You know what I mean? So, you know, it was just all of that, just thinking about everything, you know, just the whole history, running on Apollo in '96 and all of this stuff. working with Maurice Starr for, some months in 97, who discovered New Edition and New Kids on the Block. And, that song, when You Think You Know Someone, the first time I actually recorded it was actually in Maurice Starr's son studio. He arranged it because he wanted to see what I could do, and because originally he wanted me to be a lead singer in a new group, but then it turned into a gospel group called Five Young Men. But if it was going to be an actual real group, I would have did it probably. It probably would have been another New Edition. But thankfully, I stuck with funk because that definitely wasn't going to be fun.
So on Nothing Left to Do, the guitar on that, is that a keyboard or an actual guitar?
Oh yeah, Nothing Left to Do. Yeah, I did the guitar on keys on that. But man, I love that song. It was just if everything was right in the world, it probably would be like a radio hit or something. But it could probably still be, if I got the, figured out the right ways to get it to the playlist and things of that nature. You've heard of a record label named Why the Funk, right?
Why the funk?
Like WTF, Why the Funk?
Mm.
Yeah. Well,
Who's, who's on it?
I believe the newest release from them was actually Enema Squad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So, and I'm real cool with Gabe and stuff. So shout out to Gabe Gonzilla. Master. I saw that interview too. I watch a lot of your interviews, really, because it's the best place to find out anything. I mean, it's the only place. There you go. Yeah, I think that's the one. Because they released a single, and I believe that was the one that was on Wide.
Yeah, it's got the WTF. I don't know if you can see it.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'll say this: I am in talks of possibly working with them and releasing some physical copies. And they're really good with shout out to Brooke Plaget. They're really good also with like merch and shirts and things of that nature. So, me and Gabe, like I said, we're cool as hell, and but it wasn't strictly through him, but at the same time, I may actually perform with Enema Squad soon. We've talked about it. It's up in the air. You know what I mean? There's a lot of possibilities. The whole thing with being in the P-Funk Collective, and I've been in since 2014, since I was with Original P with Grady. But there's so many people.
How'd you connect? How'd you connect with Grady?
How I connect with Grady, it was mainly through Theophilus Glass, Chip Maniac. He was also I'm sure you've probably seen him around, but he was in a group called Highland Place Mobsters with Dallas Austin. It was the first group signed to LaFace, even before Outkast. They were on like the Boomerang soundtrack. And anyway, so we've always been cool, we had our ups and downs, but we're still cool. My brother. And he had a brother as well. And also his father is this cat named Gorgeous George. And Gorgeous George was very instrumental in discovering Jimi Hendrix. And he worked with Isley Brothers, He was his name was Gorgeous George. And so anyway, there was this convention, kind of like a music awards show convention type thing, at a convention center next to Hartsfield in Atlanta. And they were going to give Grady an award. And that's when I really finally met him. And that was 2013. And later on, 2014, that's when he officially asked me to join Original P and on keys and vocals. And, of course, that lasted all the way to really 2018, really. Because, I mean, the Original P really didn't disband or whatever until Gino, Grady's son, passed away. And then before that, it was Derek Davis, Ray Davis. And they were kind of like the leader. They were kind of like two band leaders at the time. basically, along with a cat named Scott Smith. So it's getting tight. So, but I was able to co-produce the Funk Force Trauma thing, and that's where now it's time to move came from, and then I put it on the Final Battle later that year, 2016. Yeah.
Original P shows, did you get to play a lot of, classic Parliament stuff?
Oh yeah, I mean that was basically our set. It was the classics. And that was the main thing. We were trying to put one or two albums together. All of us really, and because the whole thing was you wanted to at least have something new to play or whatever. But I think it worked the way it was going to work. You know what I mean? And overall, because of the whole documentary that came out and things, a lot of stuff started going in another direction. But I knew that I was always still going to be a part of this P-Funk collective period, and I was going to, whatever anybody wanted me to do, as far as whatever band, Animal Squad, the main P-Funk, 420 Funk Mob, now Groove Allegiance, any of them, I'm down for all of them. And and Exiles of the Nation I believe will. I mean, the next thing I'm looking toward doing is compilation, because it's our 20th anniversary next year, and so it doesn't make sense to finally have a real definitive, 16 song collection, and that would probably be the first release on WTF, if not a physical version of the new album.
I wanted to ask you, how come Omnipresent is not on like Bandcamp?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. Like certain albums, like on Bandcamp, there's a thing where you can get a bunch of our albums and pay like a low price for it. But certain albums I didn't put on Bandcamp. They were only on the mainstream ones, because that's the hard thing about Bandcamp and the more mainstream streaming things, because Bandcamp is great as far as artists getting their money in a couple of days quick, but people can listen to stuff on Bandcamp and it won't even count as streaming. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of people who have streamed Exiles and Nation stuff on Bandcamp, but when it comes down to how many plays is on Apple or Spotify or YouTube, the Bandcamp plays don't even count. So it's like, I got like them 20, 30,000 views, streams on Bandcamp, and it don't even like equate to the set.
Does
So that's the hard part.
Does Bandcamp give you that data?
Yeah, they give you data. They show how many times it's
So
been played.
At least you know.
Yeah, but it's cool. I mean, I love it though. I mean, I get it. I wish that it would, because maybe then, because sometimes you would tell somebody that, okay, your album or your single is released on Bandcamp, and some people here would be like, Bandcamp, what's that? That's someplace I gotta apply for. I gotta go there. In other words, they've never heard of it. You know what I mean? They've only heard of Apple and Spotify and YouTube and Tidal and all of those things. So you try to tell them to go someplace that they've never been. They're like, I ain't going there. That better be on Apple. Better be on my iPhone. But I love Bandcamp though, and they've been really good to me over the years. And I think, like I said, as things gear more towards independent, because the fact of the matter is, even if you're on a major, you're probably not going to sell that much anyway. So I think Bandcamp probably could get even bigger. No, I don't see any problem with it, no. But
one of the things I appreciate about you, Defiance, is, on social media, you're so outspoken about, funk and about music and about the bands and,
yeah,
and even sometimes, against the grain a little bit, you take stands, and I'm like in total agreement with, the vast, almost everything that you post. But um,
Thank
with that in mind, if you only had 5 albums on Desert Island, what would you take with you?
That's the crazy thing about P Funk is because I would love to check an album, but they don't. There's a collection. I mean, I guess like you could take the 1974 to 1980 Tear the Roof Off collection, the 2 CD Parliament, and then there's a Funkadelic one that's like a 2 CD set thing. You know what I mean? So, but man, studio albums are so important to me, to the fact that to the point where it's hard to pick which one. But I say Around the World in a Day is my favorite Prince and the Revolution album, favorite Prince album. The Gold Experience is my second favorite. I would say I would have to make Let's Take It to the Stage and Tell the Kid Funkadelic a double album. Because I always listen to it as a double album anyway. Yeah. So that's 2, 3. Earth, Wind and Fire. Wow. That's a hard question. I'm at the comment it. I'm at the there's a lot of albums, I love the Beatles, Abbey Road, of course, Beach Boys, and everything after, I mean, between 66, Pet Sounds, Smile, and Brian, Brian is just, Brian Wilson doesn't get enough credit for a lot of stuff. He really was the first self-produced artist, They didn't let artists do that. They didn't let bands produce themselves. You know what I mean? But he was like the first, and that's when Motown, let Stevie do it, and then it started off from there. And Prince was able to do what he did, and now I'm able to do what I did. And because the industry really doesn't like people who know how to do everything themselves. They want assembly line. They want how many categories, how many songs, that get nominated for Grammys got like 20 writers. It took 20 writers to do that.
Way too many.
It took 20 writers to write that song. Huh? Really?
Yeah.
A 3-minute song with no samples. And it took 20 people to do it. Wow.
You can't have that many people and have a creative vision realized.
Right. Exactly. It's impossible. But
you picked
I would just, you know what? I wouldn't even take the CD or album. I would just take, I would have my phone, and that's the crazy thing. All the music you ever want to hear ever is for free. So I would just take my phone and hopefully have an unlimited, everlasting charger and just listen to everything, And of course, I'd have some drinks and a cigarette.
Just some observations on what you mentioned, though. You picked the final 2 Westbound records for Funkadelic to combine, and the Prince records that are 10 years apart, 85 and 95. So,
yep.
Interesting.
One by the Revolution and one by the New Power Generation. And so, what did you think? I mean, just thinking about it. Like, I mean, I'm sure the Gold Experience must have blew your mind when you first heard it.
Yeah, that's I think it's my favorite 90s record by him. I really like the Symbol album too. But the whole thing with the Gold album was following him then, that was like maybe my favorite Prince era from like 92 to 95 when he was in the whole slave, disagreement with Warner Brothers, and he was going out there and being so defiant and scaled down to a band where he was playing all the guitar and he was still, out front doing that, and the MPG was just taking no prisoners, and they were also doing more funk and more like rock with guitar. I love that
Yeah, it
era.
was rock. And it felt like they were really like a real like team band. You know what I mean? Like they were almost like, remember the AMAs when they came out and they did that medley, and they did Billy Jack Bitch 319 and I Hate You and stuff like that. And just seeing them, when Prince got his Lifetime Achievement Award that night, and just seeing them right on stage, they just looked like they were ready to just start a whole new revolution, basically. No pun intended. And of course, the next year, they, after Chaos and Disorder, that band was over. But I love it. Big ups to Michael Bland, and Sonny T, and Tommy Barbarella, and Mr. Hayes, Maite. And, also definitely, I mean, it's been a rough month, Fly on Cat Glover. That was devastating. And Tito Jackson as well. Can't believe it.
Yeah. Yep. They just keep going, man. It's just the way things are, unfortunately. But so many just way before they should or you expect it,
Yeah. It's just like, but it's just, I think it's just telling everybody that, we need to really get back to the real appreciation of music. That's it, And I think we're going in the right direction. I believe so, because people got to know that it can't get any lower than it is. But it is, if it gets any lower,
you're saying that, but then right here is AI, and
yeah, exactly.
so I'm hoping that, AI actually is going to help people appreciate more and discover more funk and that kind of music, that AI cannot replicate. There's no way. I don't care what kind of programming they put in. It's not going to have that kind of chemistry, like you say, of a band and the give and take and just,
Right.
that energy that you can only get through that human
Yeah,
connection of playing.
yeah. Human connection, not corrupted connection. And that's the whole thing. It was always about humanity and all of that, and really showing human emotion, and and showing also, not every funk song has to be a party song. Funk can be anything. It don't have to be just about the party. But even if the song isn't a party song, you can still party to it, even if the lyrics aren't just about party. But you can still party to it. Yeah, no matter, as long as the groove. The groove is the most important thing. Period.
Yeah. Some of the
Always.
best funk is super slow funk. That's,
Yeah,
it ain't for dancing, it's
right. Well, I mean, that's what confused people about There's a Riot going on, I'm sure. They're like, what is this? Just like a baby, Come on. That's probably my favorite track on that album.
what's
Just
up.
like a baby. You know,
Is there anyone on your bucket list, man, that you hope to, either play with or meet?
and Sly. Sly. Obviously, definitely at George, but I want to actually, finally really be able to just hang out with him, just finally, it would be nice. Or just even talk to him like just regularly, just a regular thing. Um, Obviously, Philip Bailey and Berdine White and Ralph, Earth, Wind and Fire. Um, there's a lot of people, all of them, but really the main bucket list is officially being in Parliament Funkadelic. That's the number one thing, So, and I believe it can happen still. It came really, really close. It really did. I don't want to go into it that much, but it really did. But
Well,
and it's all good. And
if that
they love me and I love them. So
if that did happen, Defiance, do you think you would just be doing vocals or would you do some keys or what do you think your role would be if that happened?
um, first is going to be vocals, because Danny is he's a monster on keys. So he can do it all, But I wouldn't mind, adding some keys to it. They've had secondary keyboard. I remember that one tour once, which is one of my favorite P Funk shows, 78, the black and white one, New Jersey, Caseta. One Nation Under Groove, like the kickoff. Bernie and June. God. You cannot get any better than that, but but I'm sure Danny and me could try to pull it off. It could happen, like I said, we're all cool and we're all family. And they know how dedicated I am to P-Funk and funk and rock and just the whole thing. And so it could happen. We'll see. Next year is it's really all open, really. Like, and then it's the 20th anniversary of Exiles too next year. So I think it's going to be a pretty good year next year. I believe so.
Well, congratulations on the record and congratulations on the 20th anniversary coming. And, thank you from all the other Funketeers like myself for, keeping it alive and keeping, loyal to it and, keeping the faith, man.
I truly appreciate it, man. It's been, definitely one of the best interviews and just being able to really finally, talk about the music and the albums, and that was that's the whole thing about, being independent and things. You don't really have the backing and things for people to really just talk about the albums and songs like people, you see it all the time with hip hop on YouTube and all these podcasts and reaction videos and stuff. And, but it's good, you're very crucial, this type of, that platform that you have, very crucial to us because you actually really do give a damn and talk about the real music and let people know about it. That's the only way for us to survive because if the new music doesn't matter anymore, then why release an album? Just do the classics. Just do the old songs. You know what I mean? But the new music has to continue. That's the only way it can survive. So.
Yeah, I'm just not a nostalgia guy, I need new music.
Yeah, nostalgia, it's good every now and then, but you want something fresh. You want the nostalgia. If nostalgia, I'd say this. Let me make it leave it out here. If nostalgia, the only reason for nostalgia is to only think about the old memory, then that nostalgia is going to end because where's the new nostalgia? You got to have something new to remember. You know what I mean? Because if you don't, if no album matters anymore and it's just like, out today, here today, gone today, then you're not going to have any nostalgia for any more music except for the stuff that's way 30, 40 years ago, and that's not beneficial for music. It has to continue.
Well, that's the other thing that I just really appreciate about you too is, that you still promote and believe in albums, not just tracks, and
Thanks.
albums matter, bands matter, funk matter,
Right.
you know?
And especially with, a lot of the funk bands, they really, really focus on the singles and just the classic party jams or the hits or whatever. They don't, Earth, Wind and Fire, P-Funk, all of these bands have all these albums that actually went gold and platinum. And people don't even really talk about these albums. They just talk about their greatest hit album. You know what I mean? And I think that's probably part of the reason why I kind of strayed away from really putting out some kind of greatest song collection album because I wanted people to focus on the albums. But when it gets to a point, you have to kind of narrow it down. After a while.
Well, you've done as many as you have. It's reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to have something to introduce them. That's the only way to, so I know that. But it's just crazy, Earth, Wind and Fire, Spirit and I Am and All and Raise. And people aren't talking about these albums. They're talking about the songs that came from the album, one or two. You know what I mean? It needs to be back on. Let's talk about these people's classic albums the same way that they always talk about Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles.
Well, that's part of the short shrift that funk gets in general is they look at the songs instead of the albums. I mean, there's a lot of that, not just Earth, Wind, and Fire, but I mean, talk about someone like the Ohio Players or War, these amazing albums, but mostly people only pay attention to a few hits.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh no, that's what I was going to say. I was saying that that's the problem when people, if they start really paying attention to the classic albums that they release, then you'll have less of a problem with somebody thinking that Brick House was made by Earth, Wind and Fire or Shining Star was made by P-Funk. There's people out there who really don't know. They know the names of these bands, but they don't know that, what band did these songs. You know what I mean? But if they knew these people's albums, then they wouldn't be that confused.
Yeah.
Like who in the world would think that Brick House was made by Earth, Wind and Fire, and who would think that Shining Star was made by people? But there are people out there who don't know the difference, But if they knew their album,
they need education, and that's just part of how they tend to market those groups for some reason, as opposed to a lot of the rock bands where they made it more album focused. Unfortunately,
right. They tried to make everything like a K-Tel commercial, like one of those things that they would, at the late night. Oh, here's 20 greatest hits by call this 1-800 number now. That kind of thing. And they marketed all the funk hits into one thing instead of actually marketing the actual albums. You know what I mean? And that's a problem that my father's band went through in the 70s. Only being able to put out singles and not letting them do an album. You know what I mean? So
yeah, rap and hip hop had to deal with that too for a long time.
Oh yeah. I mean, it wasn't really until maybe like Paid in Full by Eric B. and Rakim that people started really taking hip hop albums seriously. That was what Paid in Full, Eric B. and Rakim, and then NWA, Straight Outta Compton. So that's when people started really paying attention to like rap albums as albums. You know what I mean? And I'll say big ups to Tribe Called Quest. They just got inducted.
Yeah.
All of that. So
yeah,
they were really good on albums. Well, yeah. So.
Well, hey man, it's been cool talking to you and getting to know you better face to face after all this time, and I'm glad we could do this, man.
Oh yeah, let's do it again.
Keep putting out music. We'll definitely do it again.
Thanks, man. It's in me. So you're going to hear something new from me sooner or later. It's going to happen. And hopefully I'll be
keep you quiet.
I mean, look, there will be collaborations. I'm open to collabs. So all the people out there that, know me and Exiles Nation, T-Funk and all of that. And I mean, hey, just vibe and let's see what we can do. I mean, shout out to everybody in the Facebook punk community and this punk community out everywhere. And those people will really appreciate it because we got a lot of work to do, but I don't think it's going to be that hard. Now that some of this stuff is out the way, it's kind of a celebration. Celebration. I love Cool in the Game, but Celebration probably was maybe one of my least favorites. But I tell you what, when they did it at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a few days ago, it actually really it made sense to me finally. Yeah, and it's a celebration because this could actually happen. Funk could actually really, like, the trap stuff, the Trap City is over. It's like, kind of like what Kendrick Lamar said. He was like, I didn't have to get rid of y'all. Y'all did it yourself. I didn't have to murder. You know what I mean? So now that things are seem like a little freer, hopefully we can just finally unite everybody. I tell you what, last thing, when I was leaving on the plane, about to leave the BWI airport, the last thing I saw was a United airline plane. The last thing I saw was United. And that was just poignant because that's what I felt. I felt for that weekend, funk, the whole funk community was truly united. And that's what the Funketeer Ball is all about. Fly on George H. Darden, too. He was a great person. And he definitely did his thing. And shout out to everybody who helped organize that Funketeer Ball. And shout out to Garrett once again.
Well, by the time this posts, we'll hopefully have a new president because it's going to be a few weeks to get this edited and posted. Hopefully it'll be the right choice, and 25 will look up as we're saying.
Oh yeah. I mean, you know, I'll just I'm looking forward to that. And also looking forward to finally kind of getting through the campaign so people finally start talking about music again. That's all. But you know, we gotta just be optimistic. And you know, I never want to ever feel, you know, make it seem like I'm pandering to anybody or anything or whatever. You know, it's always, you know, music is my Exile music is for everybody, punk rock is for everybody. But you know, just see what happens and wish for the best and take action the way we need to take action.
All right, look, Defiance, before we sign off here, tell the people where they can get your work.
Oh yes, you look up Exiles of the Nation on any mainstream streaming platform, Apple, Spotify, Tidal, YouTube, Amazon, anywhere. Or you could also go on bandcamp.com as well. But you know, it's all over the place. All you have to do is Google Exiles of the Nation, EOTN, and or YouTube. You know, if you just want to stream it on YouTube, you just put in Exiles of the Nation topic, because that's the trick. If you put in any artist or band's name and then put topic after it, then you're automatically sent to their page with all their albums and everything. You know, so basically you can listen to everything free for forever. So, but hopefully y'all, you know, download some stuff too and buy them. That'll be nice.
Yeah, support
Please.
independent artists who are still doing it, like Exiles of the Nation for sure. Hey man,
Uh,
peace to you.
try.
Much love, funk, all that good stuff.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you for existing, because you're the one. You're on the one.
Thanks, man.